money is just a subset of connection. So what I realized was it's not just about money. It's about everything that we need to be connected to. Money is just one of those connections. So if it feels like everything you try to do in your business is hard, if you struggle to move your business forward, if it seems like you should be at some other point in your business further along, it could be because of some disconnect in your business.
Hello, I'm Debbie Shadid, the host of the Life Coach Business Building Podcast. If you are ready to have more clients in your life coach business, then you're in the right spot. Each week, I'm going to teach you super simple strategies to grow your business without feeling overwhelmed and without spending money on paid ads. Now, if that sounds interesting, stick around and let's get started. All right, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad to have you here with me, and I have a friend. Jill she's been Jill the Money Coach, and now she's Jill the Connection Coach. I want you to meet Jill Wright. I'm excited to have you here. We have been on each other's podcasts in the past, and you've made some big shifts. So introduce yourself, tell me what's happening, bring us up to date.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to get to talk about this today. It really is something that I haven't talked about publicly yet. So
I'm the first.
This is a great testing ground.
That's awesome.
So I have always had a no-nonsense approach to my coaching. The people come in and I get right to the core of the problem, and I feel like I just really help them identify the real problem so that they can get past that stuck. And what I've always done since day one in my business is I've focused on the aspects around money. We have so many money stories, so many blocks around money, and I saw this among the coaches that I was peer coaching with. I saw it even on, the certified calls with Brooke Castillo. And I would be like, oh my gosh, that's a money mindset issue. I can solve that problem. And I have done this for 4 years in my business. But what I didn't see was the bigger piece outside of the money. What I didn't realize that it's not just about the money, it's about something much bigger. And what I'm calling that is connection. It's when we get disconnected from those things in our business, even in our life, that really define who we are and how we show up in the world, then that just creates such a struggle. And so the way that I discovered this was actually going on this journey myself. So about 6 months or so ago, I was just really struggling in my business. And I just really felt this sense that there was a shift coming. And I wanted to lean into that. And fortunately, I have the freedom to do my business in a way that I don't necessarily have to make money, which creates so much flexibility and freedom to go on these little mini journeys, right? So I took what my coach called an out of business experience. And it was supposed to just last for the summer. I've now extended it through the end of the year. But where I pretty much step back from my business, I'm still serving my existing clients. I'm still doing things in my business, but it just looks a little bit different. I'm not trying to grow my business, right? I'm getting ready to relaunch my business as the connection coach. And I'm really excited about that. But that journey that I went on was about that struggle. It was figuring out, where am I disconnected? And one of the things that I discovered, which I didn't really expect, is that I wasn't connecting with my ideal clients because I wasn't even connected to who I really was. And so that was the biggest aha.
How did you know you weren't connecting? I guess first with the clients, and then you reflected and realized it was you.
Yeah, well, I had this belief that everybody is already who they're designed to be, who they're truly meant to be, who they need to be. It's just that we have all of these filters that we're going through, all of these shoulds. I look at them as like sticky notes. We just have sticky notes all over us. And when we're operating with these sticky notes, we're not operating as our true self, as our core self. We're operating
Mm.
as we think we should operate. And so I started thinking, well, if I could just be more me, I could be more successful. And then I had to ask myself, who am I?
I was
And
just going to ask that, Jill Wright. Who are you? What did you discover?
yeah, well, I discovered I used to think that I was a high achiever, and I discovered that I'm not, which was
Ah,
really important thing to know about myself. Because when I first started my coaching business, the plan was that my husband had retired. I had left my corporate job. The whole thing was this was going to be a retirement adventure, right?
uh-huh.
But what that turned into was a lot of shoulds, right? So I was going to build my business part time, but I ended up working full time because I thought that's what it would take. So I stepped out of myself and into like who I need to be successful.
Uh-huh.
And it actually backfired on me. So I had to step into, okay, what do I truly want? Well, I truly just want to make an impact. I want to help coaches help more people.
Yeah.
And, what does that look like for me? So that I'm kind of still on that part of the journey. But now I'm basing that on who I am and, who I feel like my true self is, rather than on what I think a coach or an entrepreneur running a business is supposed to look like.
So I just got off of a coaching call right before you, and we had a discussion about coaches that we're all attracted to on social media. And I was asking who they were, and what I discovered was, and I've done this with two of my groups, that is the people that they were most attracted to were the most authentic people.
Mm.
It was interesting because each coach had such different opinions about who they were attracted to. And then I said, why were they attracted to him? And how could that be maybe a way that you could show up differently in your own business? So was there somebody that you were attracted to or that you could see? I'm just curious. This is unplanned here, but is there somebody that you could say, I saw what she was doing and I thought maybe that's the direction that I want to show up in my business?
Well, yeah. One person that I can point to is Kim Job.
Yeah.
That's part of her message is, yeah, you don't have to strive. You don't have to do the hard things. You don't have to do that to be successful. And I was like, yeah, I want to believe that. So I've done a couple of her programs, and the one that I did this summer in my out of business experience was Soul Stories. And it really helped me tap into this thing that we're talking about, who I really was. We looked at human design, we looked at gene keys and a couple of those things, but we also just practiced tapping into our intuition. And as I mentioned before, I've always been a very intuitive person. I've always had, an internal locus of control. And I've always been really centered in my identity. Unfortunately, there were some stories around that identity that weren't serving me. So those are the ones that I had to question and that I really had to start stepping into. Okay, intellectually, I can see that I'm not truly that. So how do I step out of that? How do I lean into who I do feel like I am? I did my top 34 strengths,
Yeah.
with Gallup, Clifton
Uh-huh.
34 strengths. I've done my Enneagram. Now, I've never been one of these personality test junkies. I mean, I always find them interesting and
Yeah, they're
fun,
interesting. Uh-huh.
but I've never felt like they could really be a driver to fueling me to be the person that I wanted to be, because I see so many people use them against themselves and use that to limit. Like, oh, one of my top 34 strengths is not discipline, therefore I can't. And so I
Right.
didn't ever want to get caught in that trap. But now I've learned to lean into those things. And so the three that I like the best for myself, and everybody's a little bit different, is human design, Enneagram, and Clifton 34 strengths. Those are the ones that I felt helped me tap into my strengths and start leaning into those strengths a little bit more. My top strength is ideator. Number 2 is responsibility. I can't remember off the top of my head what number 3 is. Number 4 is relator. I had never seen myself as a relator because I had
Uh-huh.
this core belief that I am awkward and I'm shy and I am not good with people. But it's in my heart to really connect with
Connect with
people.
people. Yeah.
And so when I started leaning into that strength, I just saw things feel so much easier for me. And so the other big aha moment for me was I was doing a lot of things in my business out of need. And when I identified my true desires and started operating out of my desire, things started to feel so much easier. It was so much easier to do a podcast. It was so much easier to post on social. It was so much easier to reach out to somebody and say, hey, let's connect. Let's have a conversation and do those things that came more naturally to me. And now I can see that it's because it is a connection, right? When I'm acting out of need, I'm actually disconnected from who I am, what I want, and my
So
perfect path to get there.
interesting. So I'm curious. It sounded like, and maybe I'm reading into what you said, but it sounded like you set some business goals based on where you thought you should be that got you working full time, like maybe a financial goal, a client goal, something like
Hmm.
this is where I'm supposed to go to be considered good in the coaching space.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then you were like, actually, that's not really what I want.
Well, it was a little bit different. I mean, ultimately, I thought that my goal was to ultimately make $1 million. And I didn't know how many years that was going to take, but I was going to set some annual goals and, maybe like a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan.
Mhm.
And then I was just going to do whatever it took. And what
I,
I realized was, yeah, it's not that I don't want that, but how I get there
mhm.
is where the disconnect was.
Yeah. I just recorded a podcast today that I'm not sure when it will air. I said at the beginning of the podcast, I feel like I'm on this truth telling mission where every podcast I'm like, here's the truth you need to know, because
I love
I
it.
think that we all have, not we all, but I think it's easy to set a goal and decide how you want to do business in a way that you think you should, and that it's not really what you really want to do. And I know that you and I have talked about that. Like, what if you were just a woman who said, I want to make $20,000 in my coaching business, and that would be such a kick, and I want to charge this much, and I'm not worried about what anybody else thinks. So
Yeah.
it sounds like that's not that you want to make $20,000, but it's like this connection of like, I want to start doing things in a way that feels better to me, or
Yeah. Yeah. I want to do things in my business that honor who I truly am.
yes. So tell me how that has, we talked briefly before we got on the podcast, but tell me how that shifts the work, or how that is different with the work that you're doing with your clients then. What's that
Yeah.
created a difference?
Interestingly enough, it doesn't really change all that much about how I'm doing, how I coach people. And it doesn't really change my core messages all that much. So if you take most of my core messages, I think this would apply to probably 80% of my messaging. If you replace the word money with connection,
Mm,
it's the same thing. Money is just a subset of connection. So what I realized was it's not just about money, it's about everything that we need to be connected to. Money is just one of those connections. So if it feels like everything you try to do in your business is hard, if you struggle to move your business forward, if it seems like you should be at some other point in your business further along, it could be because of some disconnect in your business. So if you think about a
mhm.
string of Christmas lights, right? If you can't get the strand working, it's usually because there's one or more lights that aren't connecting. And so all you need to do is together we go through that strand of Christmas lights and we check the connections until we find the one that's loose or blown out.
Oh my gosh, that is a great analogy. So tell me, If there's more connection than money,
Mhm.
what are the other places that you're talking about connection?
Yeah, so it could be a connection with your audience. It could be connection with your ideal client. It could be a connection that is preventing you from showing up consistently. Maybe it's a belief about yourself. So it's either going to be one of these three things. It's going to be either a connection with who you truly are, like I talked about. If you are disconnected from that, it's going to be hard for you to connect with your ideal clients, right? Because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they're out there trying to connect with you, but they can't quite grab onto you because you don't even know who you are. So, how are they going to know who you are? Or it's a connection with what you really want. So, if you don't know what you really want, or you know what you really want, but you're not prioritizing that, you're not giving yourself permission, you're looking for approval for what you want, then you're going to be disconnected from that. And then third, it's connecting the dots to your perfect path to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to be one of those three things. So if you think about your life, relationships with the people that matter most to you, are you present in those relationships? That could be a disconnection, right? If you're not feeling successful as a mom, what are you disconnected from? If you feel like you're not able to balance all your responsibilities, maybe there's something you need to disconnect from. Maybe it's a story. Maybe it's an obligation. Maybe it's constraint in order to connect more fully to those responsibilities and why they matter to you, why they're important to you. And then you think about your health, physical, emotional, financial,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual. What are the reasons those are important to you? What's the way that makes sense based on your design, based on your preferences, your values? What's important to you? If you're not connected to why you're even doing that, it's going to be difficult to achieve that. So it all comes down to connection. What you need to be connected to in order to fuel you, and what you need to be disconnected from so that you kind of reduce the amount of noise you have to listen to. So that connection, you get a really good, strong signal.
Wow. Okay. I'm taking so many notes. Sorry if y'all can hear my keys typing. I want to take more, but I'm trying to type quietly. So I'm thinking when you say when you're not connected to who you truly are, I was thinking, I shifted niches a couple of years ago in my business too, and just started coaching coaches about how to build a business, this really how to process. And so not so much holding space, life coaching, but more telling people the action steps and showing them how to do it. And before that, I kept hiring. I've been in business for years and I had an online coaching business and I was doing consulting. But before that, I kept hiring coaches and I spent $25,000 in coaching, trying to have these three different coaches help me not feel like I was convincing somebody. I had this convincing, pushing energy. And I kept saying, I don't want to be like that, because the truth was I didn't have to be like that, but it's like it was on my back. And I know, Jill, it's what you're talking about. I was disconnected with what I was truly supposed to be doing. So everything felt like I had to push. It didn't
Yeah.
feel like I was free to be doing or talking, or I don't know. Is that kind of what you're thinking about?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you didn't understand what your true desires were. You didn't understand, how do I want to operate in the world? How do I want to show up? How do I want to do my business? And based on what I value, what's important to me. And that's the other thing that I'm shifting into. I'm in the process of experimenting with a no selling style of business.
Tell me more.
I'm really excited about it, but I don't have a lot of information to share. I can just share my vision of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But my vision of this business where you don't traditionally sell, everything in your business is selling for you. So
Mm.
you make connections. And again, one of my top strengths is relators. So it makes sense that I style my business based on my top strengths. Woo, which is winning over others,
Mhm.
is like
Mhm.
number 29 out of 34. So it makes sense that I wouldn't have a bunch of webinars, right?
Yeah.
Webinars are winning over others in numbers, right? I'm more of a one-to-one person
Hmm.
or small intimate groups with close connections. So that's what I'm talking about is aligning yourself with a style of business. And so I feel like when I do that, I'm not really going to have to do a whole lot of selling because everything I'm doing is helping them understand who I am, what I stand for, how I operate. And so that trust factor is built in. They understand because I'm explaining it in a simple, concise way, what I do and how that helps you move forward in your business to where I'm not going to have to really do a whole lot of selling.
So I'm thinking about as I coach clients on building their business, sometimes we come up with a roadblock of like, we get all the website done, they're on social media, they're email marketing, like they're doing all the things now to attract clients.
Yeah.
And there's still this gap of like, they're not doing something. And sometimes what I find out is that they're afraid of coaching. And I'm like, okay, but I thought you wanted to be a coach. And what it comes down to is they're afraid that they're going to do it wrong. And I'm
Mhm.
like, unless you are employed by somebody, who said that you have to do it exactly the way the education that we all have, and I value tremendously,
Yes.
is great. But like, we don't have to nobody's watching us and we can still bring tremendous value. And I know what I have said to many of my clients, it feels like freedom is like, why can't you just be a teacher? Talk to somebody and teach them and then ask the questions. And it's a different kind of approach than thinking you have to do it exactly like we were certified to do. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, all of a sudden now, kind of like what you're talking about, if I could do it more my way instead of their way, then it doesn't feel so, again, push or like I'm trying to fit myself into something that isn't where I belong. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you go and buy this really nice outfit at the store and you take it home and it doesn't fit you at all. Not
yeah.
only it's not your colors and it's not your size and it's not your style, and every day you go and put it on anyway. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly these coaches that I hired, and they were just doing their job. They kept saying to me, you have 20 plus years of experience in that business. Why would you quit something that you have built? And I was like, but it's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
It's just not what I want to do. So yeah, there's freedom in getting on the path that is perfect for you. That's exciting. So what are you doing as far as coaching? Are you doing group coaching, private coaching? I know you did a retreat. Kind of tell me what you think is on the horizon for you.
Yeah, I'm going to keep doing one-on-one coaching, and that's going to be my bread and butter. And then I'm going to do stuff that I find fun. So I probably will do retreats. I probably will do VIP experiences. I just recently had a retreat, which I sold as a retreat. It turned into a VIP weekend, which was a magical gift to me because I hadn't considered offering VIP
Ah,
experiences before. And so that showed me how much I enjoyed that and how much my guest enjoyed that. So that's something new that I want to offer in 2023. So that's going to be the bulk of it. I don't have a plan to do groups in 2023, but we'll see what happens. I'm completely
well,
open to making offers that make sense for me and make sense for the people that need my help.
yeah, I tell people when we work on their offer, you don't have to look to see what anybody else is doing. You can design an offer for you. And so like what came to mind for me is, wouldn't it be fun if you had like even like a group of three? You had group coaching, but it was three handpicked people that you took on a journey from here to there. Because again, we typically think of like we have to have 8 or 10 or 12 or 20 or whatever, and it has to be a certain way. I've even been talking to people about what if you did, like, say it would have been 12 weeks of coaching. You needed, and I always say the weeks are divided up by the steps that you need to take somebody through to get them to the transformation you're selling. How many weeks does that take? And if somebody said it was 12 weeks, I was like, you could do that like in 2 weeks. And they're like, huh? I'm like, yeah, you could do 2 hours on Monday, 2 hours on Wednesday, and you could do the same next week and it's 12 hours. And they're like, wow.
Yeah.
So really you could build a business and design it to support yourself any way you want.
Yeah, I love that. That's perfect. Yeah, because some transformations lend themselves to that more intensive experience. So
Uh-huh.
consider, what is best for your client when it comes to this type of transformation that they want and need. And what's the best way for me to offer it? What's the best way for me? What's the best way for them? And I think one of the biggest things is we have to stop looking for approval and permission to do
Yeah.
what we know in our heart is what we desire and what we want to believe so hard in that we figure out how to make it work.
Jill, I mean, you just had so many good insights. This is going to be really fun to see how all this unfolds. And I love it over the summer that you did all those interviews. So if you're listening to this, it's winter almost of 2022. And you did over the summer a whole series of interviews with people exploring coaching. Is that what you were kind of doing? Like exploring what people were doing? Or tell me about that. If anybody wants to go listen.
Yeah, and it was on my Easy Money podcast, which I'll be changing that name next year for season 3. What it started out as is because I was going to do this out of business experience, I thought, well, I'll just invite a bunch of people to have conversations with me, a bunch of coaches to have conversations with me, and we'll just talk about things they want to talk about, things they find exciting or interesting. And I know that that is going to bless somebody in my audience. That conversation that I had with that coach at that time is going to bless somebody. And that will be an easy way for me to cover the podcast during my out of business experience. So that's where it started. It was just a strategy. Okay, it's just a way to keep giving my audience value and highlight some people that have some amazing things to say and ideas. But what it turned into was just a whole lot of fun. And so it actually continued way past summer. And now I have stuff recorded. My podcast comes out every Friday at 8 a.m. Central Time. And so I have conversations with coaches recorded through December 2nd at
Oh
the
my
moment.
gosh.
Yeah.
I've got to go
Yeah.
back and listen. Wow.
Yeah. And I think I started back maybe the end of May, I want to
Yeah.
say.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, it was so much fun. I had a blast recording all those conversations with people. And each one brought a little bit different flavor to coaching, to the business world, the business of building a coaching practice. Each one brought their own little distinctive nuances to what we're doing, what we're all trying to do. So it was really interesting to see the different lenses that they brought to it. So each one has its own value. So I would listen to all of them.
That is so fun. I just want to highlight, to anybody listening, giving yourself permission to stop and question. I would say, though, not question because like you're trying to avoid the work that it takes to build a business, because it does
Right.
take some discomfort, right?
Yeah.
But I love it that you were able to just give yourself permission to look at what you were doing and that you weren't saying to yourself, like, I already have this many podcasts recorded and I already have people know me as Jill the Money Coach. And why would I stop that? And you just said, I'm going to figure out what it is that I really want to do and do it
Yeah.
differently.
Yeah. And I'm still going to be coaching on money mindset because, getting connected with those things still requires examining your limiting beliefs. And that's really ultimately at the core of what I do is uncovering those limiting beliefs that sometimes we don't even realize we have. So many of them are subconscious because we've gotten to all the low-hanging fruit, right? Now we've got to get below
Right.
that subconscious barrier that our mind puts in front of us and really build awareness around that, because until you bring it out of the subconscious into the conscious, you can't really change that belief that might be limiting you. At my core, I'm still doing that, but it's just looking at it from a completely different lens of connection versus, strictly money.
Well, so what do I need to know that we haven't already talked about that would be of interest that you want to share about this shift or about what you've discovered that we should be considering for ourselves?
Yeah. I think one thing is that people might have a question about, like, how do I know if I'm not connected? How do I know if
Oh.
there's a disconnect that I need to build awareness around? And I think the biggest thing that I see with my clients is that if you're struggling with anything in your life or in your business, chances are there's a disconnect there. And now I
Mm.
want to distinguish between struggling and hard, right? Things
Yeah.
can be hard, but not be a struggle. You can struggle with something and it might not be because it's hard, right? So there's a distinction there. So if you're struggling, if something feels hard, that's one thing, right? You can move through that, but then there's usually a point at which you either move through that and things get easier, or you move through that and you get stuck. And so that's where I feel like the disconnect happens. And that's what gets us stuck. So if you're struggling in any area, then there might be a disconnect somewhere. And so look for that disconnect. Just start, like I said, unplugging and plugging it back in and seeing, okay, is this the bulb that was out? Is this the bulb that was loose? If you think about an internet connection, if you're trying to troubleshoot that connection, what do? You go to all the connection points and you see which one is loose or which one came unplugged. There's a lot of different areas that can be in. It can be in money, which is something that, I've talked about so much. Judgment can also disconnect us. So you can
Mm.
look for, what are you judging? Are you judging yourself? That's pretty common. Most of us judge ourselves in some way, shape, or form. Are you judging other people? That will disconnect us. Are you judging the world? Again, that will disconnect you from the world. Are you judging circumstances? Right? That will create a block to the result that you want. So I just recently had this little aha moment where I noticed that, okay, when I help my husband with something and he is struggling to get something to work, I'm a very creative problem solver. I'm very innovative. And so I don't look at that as a problem. Like, okay, we don't know now what the solution is. So I will just start thinking through what all of the potential solutions could be. So when you notice resistance, then there's probably a disconnect. Because
Mm.
when I struggle in my business, there's a lot of resistance. And so that's an indicator that there's a disconnect. But when I'm helping him, there's nothing at stake. So I don't struggle. I just keep looking for solutions. And if it doesn't work, I just discard that one and I go on to the next one, the next idea. And I always come up with an innovative solution for him. I just amaze him. I'm like, yep, you're welcome. So thinking about things in terms of, okay, where don't I struggle? And thinking about, okay, in that area, what am I connected to? So think about some of the areas where you don't struggle. Do you struggle as a mom? Do you struggle as a grandma? Do you struggle showing up as a coach? A lot of times coaches say, oh, yeah, my favorite part of my business is coaching. Well, if that's where you feel connected, start to understand why you feel connected, right? It's probably because you're not believing, oh my gosh, I'm not good at this. That was where I was struggling in my business because I had this underlying belief, I'm not good at this. I'm never going to be good at this, right? So that judgment was disconnecting me. So look for areas where you're judging and then compare those to areas where you're not struggling. What were you connected to that make you successful in those other areas? So if you think about, if you're a mom, there were things that you had to figure out as a first time mom, and you didn't just stop trying whenever things got hard, right? As a mom, there's lots of times when things get hard. But why didn't you quit looking for that solution? Because you wanted the best for your kids and you weren't willing to give up. If you adopt this attitude about your business, just like your kids, your business won't have to be perfect in
Mhm.
order for you to keep trying to find the solution. I think that's the other thing that disconnects us from things in our business is that our business isn't perfect. And so we just want to disconnect from it. We want to detach from that imperfection because we make it mean something about us. So find out where you're struggling, find out where you're disconnected and start there. And then you can start reconnecting in those areas and finding why did that matter to you in the first place, right? Think of something you do because it's important to you. And like what qualifies you to be a mom, right? You don't do things that are important to you because you're qualified. You do things that are important to you because they're important to you. So what makes you qualified to own a business could be as simple as I want to, right? So something like that can
Oh,
reconnect you to the things that you're doing in your business. You don't have to apply for the job because you're the boss. You don't need anyone's approval or permission. And so connecting to what you want and connecting to that what you want matters, then that's going to help you reconnect to the things that you want to show up in.
oh my gosh. So good. I'm going to have to go back through my notes and look. I'm trying to highlight, if I could recap what the key pieces of this are today. First of all, you were talking about really stepping into who you truly are and trying to figure out what that is. You were talking about really figuring out what you really want, that you haven't maybe giving yourself permission to do or to accept or to try, maybe, about disconnecting from things and connecting to things. I love this idea about doing this out of business experience, because this doesn't have to be like for a long time. This could even be a week where you spend
Yeah.
some time really investigating and looking to see what you're doing. You and I talked before we got on about becoming your future self. And you said to me, and I wrote down, we really already are who we're meant to be.
Yes.
We don't have to be. So how do we build a business on that? Is that the idea, Jill?
Yeah. Yeah. Because the only reason that you've ever showed up as anybody different was because you were disconnected from that.
And I just think business could be so easy. Again, if I go
Yes.
back and share about the coaching that I did right before I got on, that's what it came down to, was if you really are who you are and you're really coaching the way you want, really on how you want, charging the way you want, it just all makes it so much easier and so much more fun. And I think people can really have much faster success when they're trying to do it in a way that feels, to take your word, connected to them.
Yeah. It honors who you are. I couldn't agree more. That's one of the messages that I wanted to convey in my Easy Money podcast was things can be easy when you stop overcomplicating, stop overthinking things, and just give yourself permission to do things the way that works and makes sense for you.
Oh, so good. Well, this was fun, Jill. Thank you so much for being here. We've connected so many times and it's been so fun. I say we should get on the calendar for next spring again so you can tell us how this actually all plays out. I'm excited to hear about, the podcast change. And I know you're working on some website changes and all that.
Yeah,
as you
absolutely.
are now, Jill, the connection coach. So tell me then, where do people connect with you right now in this transition? Yeah, what would you like him to know about that?
Yeah, they can connect with me on my website, jillwrightcoaching.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest at Jill Wright Coaching. And I love to connect with people. I love to collaborate with them. I have links on my Instagram page. If you click the link in my bio, where you can set up a virtual coffee chat, set up a time to collaborate with me. We'll just get together and brainstorm. So those are easily accessible on that Instagram page. I would love to have a conversation.
I'll just end with that. When you don't have to sell, like, let's take it back to what you said, you can also truly say, and I also teach this to my clients, like, just connect with people.
Yeah.
Have a conversation. Like, if you can support each other and give to each other, and I can help you and you can help me, if the person sees there's value in moving forward with you, they will say that.
Yes.
They'll say, Jill, how can I work with you? I want to know that. Well, tell me what this would look like. So I want to encourage everybody. Yeah, do what Jill's talking about. If you really show up and serve, we both have that same value of service, serve and give, and just trust that it will all work out the way that it should. Then you can go and just have a coffee chat and not worry about making a sale of your coaching, and it will all work out the way it's meant to be.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Well said.
All right, Jill, thank you so much. Take care of yourself. And yeah, excited to catch up with you later.
Yeah. Thanks, Debbie. Thanks for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation today.
All right, we'll see you soon. Okay, ladies, that is it for today. Before we go, I want to invite you to head over to debbieshadid.com. I have this incredible Canva training specifically designed for life coaches where I'm going to teach you how to use Canva to create beautiful graphics to market your life coaching business. All right, have an amazing week. I'll talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.